Okay, so he had used the mechanism of what it requires to land softly as a principle to design his packaging. Okay, another person had actually used the principle of seed. He put a fan on top of it, so when it falls down, it falls circularly, and so it doesn't really get damaged. So it was very clear. So you had to have a different way of thinking here, where you actually thought horizontally and then come out with a solution. So that's one nice example, okay? So I'll give you another example to say how design thinking can be used very effectively. Design thinking says that you can solve very complicated problems, but for that you have to follow a simple process. Okay, the process is very simple. It says that wherever the problem exists, you go to the place and try to understand it, study it. If it is people, you build empathy with them. You put yourself in their shoes to understand it. Okay, then you kind of understand and analyze what the problem is. Okay, then you come out with creative options. You don't come out with the first, solution that you have. You come out with multiple solutions. Okay, and then you pick and choose one of them. And after that, you can actually try to build it, make a prototype, use your engineering principles or science principles and do it. And then that becomes your final solution. And invariably what happens in this process is that you're able to do something which has not been done before. Okay, that's the big takeaway. So we realize that you can actually apply this methodology to anything. Whether you're teaching physics, science, chemistry, whether later on you become a lawyer or a scientist or even a doctor, you can use this principle of, looking at the process and trying to change things. Okay, so that is what. So I'll give you another simple second example. Second example, we were very fortunate by the Election Commission. We were commissioned to design the electronic voting machine. Okay, this was in the 90s. So what we did was that we could have just sat with the electronics and come out with a solution. No, we didn't do that. We actually went to different places where the by-elections were held, and we actually wanted to study how elections are done, what happens in a booth, how much time it takes, what kind of stakeholders are there. So we talked to the voters, we talked to the politicians who are standing for election, the election people, who are conducting the election. Okay, so we understood the problem from all these point of view. Okay, so one of the big takeaways, for example, we understood was that in the old system, it was a paper system, right? So you can capture the booth and within a short time, you can actually put all these votes and put it into the system and that's done, okay? So how to mitigate this, right? So that was one big problem. Second was that there was a distrust of the system. People didn't really believe that, everything was held authentically. There's something somewhere wrong, right? So we had to build these things into the mechanism itself. So one of the things we did was that the sense of security we know is that Indians are very good. We try to put big locks. We put seals sometimes. Okay, so we said that let's try to integrate that into the voting machine. Voting machine locks itself electronically. Nothing you can do. But it is not a physical manifest because you can't see it being locked, right? So what we did was that in the doors which close, we put a loop and you can put a thread and you can seal it physically. And you can even put your signature on it, okay? And that became a very trustworthy way of doing it. It was something very cultural which was there. If we had not gone around and seen this, we wouldn't have come to that solution. Even now, the voting machine has this as a solution. We also built a span of about 3 minutes between the two votes, okay? You cannot press continuously. So even if a voting is done, the next voting can only be done after 3 minutes, okay? So this delay made sure that the booth can't be captured and, number. So I'm just telling you two things where you have to think very horizontally and come out with solutions, okay? So to put the whole thing in perspective, just wanted to say that this method of studying, by doing projects, by exploring, experimenting, making mistakes has been part of the design curriculum. for a very long time. I studied design in IIT in the 1970s, mid-70s, okay? And we started by trying out things, and you get involved in that, okay? It's experiential learning. You do projects, that means you do it and learn. Many times it's dirty, you get your hands dirty in learning this, okay? And how much of this can be applied to other fields is something that we can talk about, okay? And what has happened is that then design was practiced in the West, and it had its importance. We looked at the West for good design. Okay, though we had our traditional design in India, which was very sophisticated, but we kind of lost it somewhere. Okay, and industrial products came in. So India, after the country opened up, again became design conscious. Okay, so the growth of design schools happened. Okay, initially there was only IIT Bombay and the National Institute of Design. Other schools came in. And now the growth is almost like every month there are 10, 15 schools coming up, altogether about 300, 400 schools are there. So that's another option which is there for a student, which was not there before, so they go into the creative industries. Okay, so that is one track you can think of, okay? But I think more than that, what we are saying is that if you actually apply the principles of design thinking into physics and make learning of physics much more enriching, that's one way out. Okay, so this is what we've been doing. At one end, you can go through a program of design thinking, take its principles and apply it how you can actually teach better. Make the teaching a much better experience process for the students. At the other end, you can use the design thinking process as a creative discipline so that the students learn the fundamentals of design and they become creative problem solvers. Okay, but ultimately, even if after passing out, if they don't pursue design, this knowledge, they would always have it with them. Whether they become doctors or something else, they would go and apply this knowledge to whatever discipline they're trying to do. Okay, so just wanted to ask you, does that little bit make it clear what could be design thinking? Yeah? Yeah? So it is a horizontal way of thinking rather than a vertical way of thinking. And a lot of sciences, maths, everything, you solve the problem very vertically. There are steps to do it, and if you go through it, you actually find the answer, and typically there is one answer. Okay, whereas in design, you actually try to solve the problem, you come out with many solutions. And it's always a challenge to pick up the right solution because there is no one way of doing things. You'll actually discover there are many ways of doing things. Okay, so that is the big difference. Yes.
It's like divergent thinking.
Yes, divergent thinking is another name for the same thing, the process. A lateral thinking is another name. Out of the box thinking is another name. Okay, so what we are doing is we are saying it is not something which is, comes in a jiffy, but you can actually follow a process and everybody can learn it, Otherwise you think, this student is creative, he's born with this creative ability. What we are saying is that everybody is creative, it's just that you have to exercise your creativity. And to exercise that creativity, if you can use the design process, it becomes easier to do it. That's the only premise on which we've done it. So for the last 1.5 years, we've been, working on trying to develop a curriculum. I have just, 2 sample books here. This is for class 6. So I'm going to just circulate, but I'll go through the slides here. One is, we said that, roughly, if you have to learn design thinking, you have to learn through problem solving. Okay, it is a hands-on exercise. Okay, it is not a theoretical subject. It's only when you apply it, you come to understand it. Okay, so we said that one of the things we decided was that we'll not really have textbooks, but we'll have task books. Okay, task books are problems that are given which the students will solve with the help of the teacher, and the teacher kind of mentors the students to solve it. They come out with many solutions, and they get confidence in doing it. And you can increase the complexity of these problems from year to year. Okay, so simple problems to bigger problems, problems which are very, near to them in the initial period to problems which are like, let's say, world problems at the 12th standard. So we said that let's map these things and then do it, So maybe if you can put on the slides, we can go into this. So I can operate here, right? Okay. Yeah, so it started, Professor Jyotsna was part of this also. We held twice meetings in our school to discuss about how to introduce design and innovation in school curriculum, and it was during the, conference that we held called as Designing for Children, and we had big committees which sat together, almost about, 60 people, who are teachers, who are design teachers, professionals. We sat together and made a proposal and sent it to the ministry. But at that point of time, there was no way they could actually introduce a new subject, so that was the difficult part of it. But I think the whole thing changed when NEP 2020 came into being. It had mentioned many of the things which are very dear to design. For example, critical thinking, communication techniques, creativity and innovation. Yeah, these are part and parcel of design, courses. So it became very easy to convince the ministry, saying that I think, it is also very important because design and innovation will also in the later period go towards enriching our own nation, because if everybody becomes creative and they can solve problems, then, then it will become a big boon to the country. So I think after mapping to NEP 2020 goals, they said they formed a committee to look into it, and they said, let's do it for the 6th standard onwards. So 6th, 7th, 8th, it's an exposure program. But from 9th onwards, it's about 18 hours during 6th, 7th, 8th. Okay, either in 6th or 7th or 8th, the students can try out this course. If they think that is, they have enough interest in this, then continue it on 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, where it becomes almost 160 hours. So this is the rough background. But if you look at it, we have in the center, that's the intention, what we want to do. The course is learned through by doing tasks. That means there are small projects, which are given and they solve it through it. The teacher teaches them using exposures. There are a set of slides or a video that is played for them to get exposed to the subjects, and through examples and case studies. Okay, and there are some tools in the process they learn, like for example, brainstorming or mind mapping. These are tools for creativity which the students can learn. Okay, and they learn the process of how to solve the problem. Okay, so to do this, we formed a team there because the content creation was very important. So the experts added to this, and whatever we did, we gave it to the teachers to go try it out with students and get a feedback, and we incorporated this feedback into the task books. At the other side, there was this big task because teachers are not trained in design thinking. So how do we do it? So we've created a teacher's manual, which is a much more detailed aspect of this. And we are actually going around the country, in different places, training the teachers who would become master trainers, and they would teach some more teachers. And in this endeavor, the ministry's innovation cell has been a big help to us. They have conducted design thinking course for almost 70,000 teachers. Out of that, 30,000 teachers have become innovation ambassadors in this school. They're all very highly motivated. So it's really interesting for me the first time when I go and conduct these workshops to see that kind of energy in teachers. It was really, very, for us, very encouraging that, something like this can be done so nicely in our country. So if you look at it, design task is very visual output. Okay, so there are things like you can actually put up an exhibition at the end of the course, or at the end of the year, the students can actually put up an exhibition. There could be inter-school exhibitions in this. And of course, it leads to their own portfolio, So the problems that they've solved, they become their portfolio at the end of it. They can either use it or not. And we said that let the task book be, it's not printing the end output, let it be digital, because if it is digital, you can change it very easily. We can modify it every year. Every year it's possible to add on to the kitty of problems that are given there. You can enhance their, exposures and examples, right? So it can be something which can change on a yearly basis, So we said, let's take advantage of the digital domain. In case you need to print it, let's provide PDFs which can be printed and supplied, So that became a very simple and easy model to follow. So if you look at it here, at the end are the steps for the design thinking process. Okay, it starts from observation to understanding to ideating to prototyping and then finally reflecting. That's kind of put into all the subjects they study in the school. Okay, and that becomes the curriculum. And for that, we have different outputs, which can be useful to different things. There's an introduction and, frequently asked, a small book, because this is a new subject, and more than the students, I think the teachers would have to convince the parents about this. So it will be, because we have a mindset we need to change, right? So it was very important that we put this book together. So we have a, FAQs book. Yeah, followed by exposures. They're actually slideshows. I'll just show you one simple exposure that we've done with the help of teachers again. Then followed by the task book. And because it's a project-based assignment that the students do, we needed to change the type of assessment that needs to be done. It's very important how the students are assessed in this particular thing. So I'll also show you. And at the end of it, they actually give feedbacks which can go on to improving what we do in the next year, And of course, the end is the teacher's manual, and they become the different modules in a particular grade. So this is an overview of it. So this is the design thinking process. Design process has been there for a very, very long time. After the industrialization, when the design schools came up in the 30s, they followed a method to solve problems because the industry was involved, and you needed steps to arrive at a solution. So that's how it started off. But in the, just the turn of this century, the companies which came up in the Bay Area, and in the Silicon Valley, they wanted to use a process which is much more immediate and catchy. So they termed the design process as design thinking. That terminology came in, it's just about 20 years now. This terminology has been used. Okay, so it involves the same thing, but in a different process. So if you look here, oops. Yeah, so you have the observation, okay, of a problem. Given a problem, you first go through that phase. You analyze the problem and you understand that particular problem space. And once you have done it, you know what the problem exactly is. You're ready to, do creativity and ideating it. Once you do it, you have to try to build it. Maybe, rough prototypes. You can sketch it. You can do paper prototypes. Okay, you have to visibly see actually what your idea is. And then finally, what you do becomes a reflection of what you do. So if you look at it, there are many things which are very dear to the design innovation, the classroom or the studio that you build. Okay, one of course is that, it is a do it and learn method. You solve a problem and learn it. Okay, so that's a very important thing. You make mistakes and you learn it. Okay. It's playful, joyful experiences, right? Because you're given a problem, there is a challenge, okay, and you have to solve it, okay. So it becomes like a puzzle solving, right? It is like playing a game, okay, but you're actually solving a very important issue. You can take up such important issue and solve it in a very interesting manner. Yeah, it also becomes very involved in terms of problem solving. once you give a problem to them, the students will get immersed into the problem solving process. We also said many times it's nice to develop this collaborative, cooperative environment in the children. So many of these problems can be solved together. Okay, and the classrooms are seen more like studios instead of classrooms. So there is no one teacher and so many students doing it, but they're all sitting together and learning it. So we'll have to change that norm from the present one. Okay, so that's an important thing for design, because the teacher becomes actually a mentor in the whole process in trying to, get the students to learn this thing. Yeah, it again goes back to this. Yeah, so exposures instead of textbooks, okay, and also the problems can be very local problems. It need not be something which is, from a different place or something like that. So it's very contextual in the sense. So it's through exploration, experimenting, and creative options. So it's also, we need to put also, instead of the 40-minute, periods that we have for different classes, it would be nice if we can combine them at least into a 2-hour slot. Because by the time you start a problem solving, it takes about that much time to solve it. So these are some of the considerations we did before doing it. Again, I need some help. It's not going forward. Okay, so this is roughly the process, lesson plans, overviews, okay, then, competencies, learning aims and objectives. We also matched it with SDG goals, which comes to modules and submodules. It's through exposures, tasks, and references are given. We set up the assessment criteria and feedback, also the teacher's manual at the same time, NCERT as exhibition and portfolios, okay, and it can become also an online documentation at the end of it. Okay, so if you look at it from a very broader perspective, right, it celebrates India, okay, and then goes to the international perspective. So the problems like 6th standard, they start with local problems and they go into global issues later on. So that's one mapping that we can do here. The other mapping is that they start solving problems which are very dear to them, then maybe their friend circle, then their families, then, society, and then the community and the world at large. So from 6 to 12, you can map that. If you look at the last 200 or 300 years, the whole emphasis has been on humankind at the cost of everything else. Okay, so we have to shift from human-centered to life-centered. Very, very important thing that we need to teach the children. So most of the problems are not about solving just problems for us, but solving for the life on earth. Okay, so that's another emphasis. The other emphasis is that we've actually created a very unsustainable world, the last 300 years again. So we have to again shift the emphasis to how to make it sustainable, how to use sustainable materials. It has to become part and parcel of every course, not just design. Yeah, so we are doing it, and the design thinking process, and also at the end it will create interest in the creative industries. Whatever profession he goes, finally he'll still become a very creative individual. That's the intention of this particular program. Okay, so this is how roughly it is. Maybe it's not that visible from far, but if you look at it, it's about 18 hours in class 6, 7, 8. Becomes 160 hours in class 9, 10, 11, 12. That's how the program was done. Okay, it maps onto the intentions of the NEP 2020. Oops. Yeah, it maps onto the intentions of the NEP 20. And a lot of visions to do with creativity, fostering, working together, the design process, okay, identify problems and be able to solve it, apply design thinking to it, okay, and learn fundamentals of design. So these are the old, and competencies wise, creativity, communications, skills, sensitivity to design, okay, identify problems and be able to analyze it, okay, explore creativity and its options, Okay, solve problems and prototype and build objects and also match it with some of the SDG goals, so that was part of the program. So if you look from 6th standard to 12th standard, it starts with basic skills, and then comes to, solving problems with creativity and thinking, and later on goes into, looking at different, subjects of design itself. Okay, so there is a progressively complexity built into the program itself. So this is a glance at the 6th standard program. Okay, so it has got fundamentals of design and storytelling. That's the first module, which is just a 3-hour module. Okay, so if you look at the problem, it can be changed from year to year, but in what we've suggested is that they look at basic elements of design, very basic elements, and they actually create a puppet at the end of these 3 hours. They work together. They also have to write their own story, okay, and they have to enact it at the end of the class. Okay, so this gives them exposure to the basic elements of design, storytelling, which is also a very essential aspect of it, and they have to enact it out. That means they have to present it. So if you look at it, all the skills, which are required. One is, the creativity skills in trying to form a puppet out of some basic elements. They can be as creative as possible. Using storytelling. Storytelling is again a very creative exercise. Okay, they have to do it. Then they have to actually plan how role playing happens with different characters. Okay, so they have to plan that, and they have to come and present it for the whole class. So they learn the communication techniques. So you can integrate quite a lot of the new age skills into solving a problem. This is just one example of it. Okay. Yeah, so if you look at the second one, it's form transitions plus documentation. So they change a form, let's say start with the cat and change it to dog in 5 steps. It can be done out of clay. Okay, so they learn the process of how some things change in real world. Okay, and this is also the basics of animation. It changes from one form to another. If they take photographs and they play it one after another, it will see that actually the cat will change from cat to dog. Okay, and the next exercise is that when they go home, they have to actually look at, trying to identify alphabets or human beings or animals, in the nature and try to photograph them. Okay, so this is the second one. Third one is, it's product forms. They take a principle from physics, which is actually sun and shadows, and they have to create a sundial, but the sundial is a little different. It's a portable sundial. Okay, so students have to really put on their thinking hats to see how they can build a portable sundial. So they're taking a, principle from physics, but applying it in real world. So maybe it's an umbrella that they can do, it's a watch. There are so many solutions. You can wear the sundial, okay, or you can stand and be able to tell the time of the day. Yeah, so students will have to come up with very creative ideas in doing it. Okay, so that's simple. And the third problem, which is there, the last problem is, they have to actually identify problems around the school itself. Okay, really think hard and come out with solutions to solve them, and then present it in the school. Okay, so in the 6th standard, for example, that problem is within the school. In the 7th standard, what we've done is that they just go outside the school in the, in the street outside, maybe the footpath, the vendors, the bus stops. They think of how it can be redesigned. In the 8th standard, they go a little more further. They go into the marketplace or a public place and identify problems and try to find solution to them. So this is how we built the complexity in the design thinking process, and slowly from their own surroundings, they go also outward and look at other issues. Okay, so roughly this is it. So when it comes to, if you look at 8th standard, okay, 9th standard and 10th standard, the complexity increases. Okay, so you get into fundamentals of 2-dimension to fundamentals of 3-dimension. Okay, you look at, for example, the initial part of the problem-solving process to come to, the extent of the problem-solving process in terms of analysis. Okay, so if you look at it, it kind of increases. So these are modules of roughly around 18 hours duration. In the 10th standard, they get into moving images, story creation, creativity, and problem solving. So do a project on creative, options. Then they learn about fundamentals of communication, then sustainability and design, basic prototyping methods, and they do a design thinking, problem solving process, taking something from nature and trying to solve it. Okay. So I'm just giving you a glance of it. In the 11th standard, it goes into different disciplines of design. It goes into, communication and publication design, into, solving information design. Yeah, so these are the different things. Then they take a communication problem and do a project in it. They get into product design, digital design, game and toy design. We've been giving an exercise from the toy and game design to teachers when we go for a workshop around the country, and they've been able to solve such interestingly problems in that, 1.5 hours duration. Yeah, and sorry, changes automatically. Okay, so that's at the end of it, they actually do a project. In the 11th standard, they do projects of different dimension. See, they do a project which is in the personal space. That means they can do their jewelry, their watch, their shoes, clothes they wear, something which they carry with themselves. Next to the social dimension, that means they solve problems which are shared by people. So they have to look at communication and solve those problems. In the third instance, they solve a public design problem. So you're just going outward. And we also have a module on Indian thought and tradition, because if you look at it fundamentally, Indian thought and tradition had so much of knowledge which was actually given, especially if you learn music, sculpture, or architecture. The essence of it is so much, but it is not there as part of our learning systems. So we thought that at least a introduction to that particular subject might actually excite the students into thinking in that particular dimension. And the last project is a 4-month project, which they can either do it alone or with a colleague. It's called the capstone project. So this kind of summarizes the program. I'll pass the 6th standard task book to see how it can be done. No, it's gone too much ahead. Okay. So there are different complexity. Just look at the problem, right? I said that you start with the problem from your own surroundings, then go outside the school, then a little more. Okay. Then you look at, like for example, in the 9th standard, you look at waste generated in the school, or go and redesign, your primary section of the school. Okay. In the 10th standard, they explore alternative to things which are of public concern, then design with nature and environment. Okay, so you look at it, it's kind of increasing. Then in the 11th grade, they do a communication design problem. Also, they learn about how to do your own startup or your enterprise, And in the 11th standard, in the 2nd semester, they do product design and again a startup enterprise. And the 12th standard, as I said, it's full of projects itself. Okay, so this is just looking at the projects that they handle in the different grades and how it changes. Okay, and we also said that let's look at grading itself as very, dear to the students. So we didn't want to give any fail grades. We wanted to be all encouraging grades. So it actually starts from beginning, that's the lowest grade, then to developing, then to promising, proficient, excellent, and outstanding. This is what they'll get in the grade sheets. So it will always be encouraging, saying that, I've achieved this one. And to make this happen, we've actually thought of a matrix with different criteria which the teacher can use to grade them. Okay, so if it fulfills all the criteria, then he gets the excellent grade. If it doesn't fit any, he gets a beginning grade. So this is how we translated them into, into grading itself. Okay, so there are a lot of issues still to be sorted out. Okay, I'm saying what is the minimum number of hours one needs? That's an issue that we need to think of. What is the ratio of homework to schoolwork? That's another issue. We've kind of said that 2:1. Okay, it should be based on learning objectives, activities, and outcomes, and it has to be evaluated. And also in the initial period, what is the amount of access to technology? Because there are a lot of places in schools you don't have any access to technology or computers. So we've taken that the problems can be solved without a computer, without access to technologies. Still you can actually go through this particular program. Maybe 10 years later, when everybody has access to it, it's not an issue at all. So on and so forth, to coming to, for example, how do you make it interested for disinterested teachers, which is a very tough question. And also in the long run, the coaching classes will come in, how to, take care of them. See, these are larger issues. We need answers to this. And I think as a curriculum committee, you need it. Okay. And also you can be part of this, of course, you can be part of the team which puts in this, you can be part of the team which promotes this, okay, you can be part of the team which gives us feedback. And I think last is the very important thing, that we need to be an ambassador to convince the parents to take up this as an option, Yeah, so that's roughly, kind of puts it in a nutshell. Okay, so we've been doing this training program in different parts of the country. Okay, so we've done it in Delhi, Calcutta, Jaipur, Bhubaneswar, Chennai, and Mumbai. Roughly about 60, either teachers or principals come and attend this workshop. It's a one-day workshop where we, tell them what is design thinking and make them go through different exercises. At the end of it, they even do a toy design exercise for about 2 hours as groups. 4 or 5 teachers join up and do. And they've done excellent work. They all design games and toys. Okay, so here you can see that, they've designed so many different toys to explain principles of sound. Each one will make different types of sound using different things. This is all that they did in, 2 hours. And the teachers had to come and make a presentation at the end of it. Yeah, you can see here he's made a robo-man to explain again principles of different principles, and it's narrated as a story at the end of it. This is the outcomes of the workshop. Yeah, so we have a team here, which did this program. There's the committee members, plus also a lot of help from both teachers and the designers. That's how we put it together. That's roughly the composition of the team here. Okay, I'll just take 5 minutes to go through the overview of, slides. We wanted to, instead of doing a textbook, which is full of text, we said that let's provide slides. These are slides for, here it's PowerPoint slides given to the teachers. They can add their own 2-bit to it, This is more like a starting slide, So this is on a subject, the basic subject, what is design. So it starts with asking the students what is design and showing them some examples and starting a conversation with the students. For example, you can say they're painting a folk art. Is it a design? Is this design? Kettle, for example, or a sports car. Okay. Or you show some logos, an advertisement, or lota or musical instruments. So it starts a conversation and what exactly is design and what part of the, article or object is actually designed here. It also shows that design can go from folk art to all the way to, advertisement to design of vehicles and, motorcycles, right? And then you get into what things are needed to make design, So you need people, you need environment, you need form, you need it to work. Okay, and mostly design is very creative and innovation is part of it, and it follows a process. Okay, so this is the fundamentals of this. Then you explain through very simple thing. Like if you had to make idlis, you need to design a vessel which can make it. If you want to make small idlis, you need a smaller vessel to do it. Yeah. So let's say look at space. If that's the regular bed, but if you want to use the space more efficiently, you can either put the bed under it, or you can put it over it, or maybe some other ways of doing it. Okay. So this is how design starts making a difference. So elements of design, all said very simply. It's the dot, the lines, the shapes, forms, textures, and colors. A single dot is simple, has no dimension, whereas a random dots can create confusion. Okay. If the dot is in the right place, it's quite nice. If it's in the wrong place, it's not so nice. Yeah, and you can see dots in things like the stars. And yeah, lines, for example, can be many types. Yeah, when dots move, they give rise to a line. Yeah, so simple things. Then again, what are the type of lines? There are curved lines which are soft. There are straight lines which are active, parallel lines which are orderly, surface lines and textured lines which can create confusion. Again, show examples. A simple line, just by changing its shape, can create so many expressions, right? Vertical lines can make something look tall, and to bring in order, we stand in a line. A zigzag line, for example, can create a feeling of adventure. Yeah, so very simple exercises, teachers can add to it. Yeah, we give this is for all the subjects. Yeah, and shape, go on to shapes. There are different types of shapes again. The types of shapes, these are the simple shapes, and two-dimensional as well as three-dimensional. Yeah. And you can do many things with the shapes again, right? Shapes again, can represent objects or logos and things like that. Yeah. Yeah, and kinds also. Yeah. So if you look at it, there's organic versus geometric, realistic versus abstract, complex versus simple, dynamic versus stable, random versus structured. Yeah. So yeah, color, again, very simple, basics of color. You mix primary colors and you end up with secondary colors. Okay, and you can see that color, for example, is very nicely mapped in the nature. Okay, so you have the warm colors and the cold colors, so you have the same thing from nature, right? Yeah, so this is just a small introduction to the basics of design. Yeah, moving on to textures and yeah, so that's roughly it, So any questions or, any feedback, I'll be happy to answer. I hope it gave you a glimpse of what we are trying to do. Sure, thanks.
Respond to the questions or while taking tea.
What actually black tea or green tea? Yes.
So just we had a very new way of presentation about thinking design. So I now request any of our colleagues want to interact with Professor Puvaiya. So the house is open. In the meantime, he is taking tea as well.
Any questions you have?
Even online.
Yeah, even online people.
And we have online participants also associated, so they can also be allowed to put their questions.
Yes, please.
Very much you explained so well design thinking, explaining the 5 phases that is emphasize, define, ideate, prototype and test. My question is that in STEM education there is a component engineering. So there in engineering component also we move in the same manner.
Sure.
So how it is different from E of STEM? That is my one question. And second thing is that can we integrate design thinking in subject, because if it is related with everyday experiences of the student, their immediate context and surroundings, so it will be helpful for them to grasp it. And the third thing is that education is all about developing thinking in various dimensions. So this is also a part of creativity and problem solving and critical thinking and evaluative thinking, analysis, synthesis, all this. So if it is integrated, then do you think it will be more helpful for the student? Of course, it is a tedious task for the teacher and we curriculum developer, but we think it can be done.
Sure. I think you kind of answered all the questions. The first one is that, the engineering way of doing things, they've realized that design process is very, very important. Okay, so they've integrated the design thinking process into engineering. That's why you find it's kind of similar. Maybe 20 years back, if you had studied that subject, it wouldn't have been. Like the way I learned engineering, it was very vertical. You had only one answer to everything. But now I think the divergent thinking is very much part of engineering. They've realized that it's very essential. The second question that how to integrate this into the school system or studying any subject, it's just that you have to reframe the question, okay? And I think you intentionally, NCERT has it in its ethos to do that. For example, you want to make it more interesting to the children, okay? So if you want to do that, if you actually look at the design process, right, it starts with observation. Any subject, if you observe, it's much easier to learn than if you do it through a rote mechanism. That's the starting point. So if you look at it, it's nothing. Next one is after observation, you need to analyze it. You have to discuss, you have to think about what you observed. So it could be like that physics principle, light and shadow. You first ask them to probably observe shadow and light in their home, what happens at night, how does the bulb cast its shadow. If the bulb is diffused, how does it cast a shadow? Then you have a small discussion in the next day in the class. They already have figured out, how light behaves, right? So it's very easy to do that. Then if you actually give them a challenging problem within this particular problem, right, where they have to think of solutions, maybe you can ask them. The simplest thing is if you ask them to design a toy with the principles of light, I'm sure all your students will come out with different ideas. And to come out with that ideas, they would have gone through the whole process. I mean, that's just one instance of how you can make it nice. And when they make the toys, they'll use paper or cardboard or, old newspapers to do it, So they actually build it. And when it is tangible, it's something they'll never forget. Because you built it with your own hands and you come to the class and you made a presentation. So you're actually building a lot of abilities. You ask the students to present so they become confident in what they're doing. Many of them remain shy throughout the school education, right? So all that, if they do something and you ask them to present, that inhibition also goes off. Okay, so in that sense, it is a very simple thing to adopt. And it can be applied to any field, so that's, I think, the beauty of it. So we are saying that at one parallel level, please, take the takeaways from design thinking process into all subjects that you do. But parallelly for students, you can also have a discipline called as design thinking and innovation, where they actually are able to express their creativity and look at problems around the schools or surroundings or neighborhoods or maybe even the world and come out with solutions, So at the end of it, they'll become very confident as people who can actually look at, probably even identify problems and be able to solve it. I think if you can achieve it, you can imagine what the country would be. The parallel is like this, So China and India are very nice examples because we similarly have similar issues to solve. So if you look at China, the way it got industrialized was that it didn't have the technology. So they invited people to come up, set up factories there. They actually almost import everything of it. But they knew that we can't remain at that level. We can't be just a place which produces something for somebody else, right? So they said that at some point of time, we have to go up the scale in the sense we have to become a little more innovative. So the way the thought was that there were around 1,000 art schools. So in 2001, they decided to make them all into design schools, art and design schools. So forcibly they brought in the design process into these schools, and in one go, China can do it, 1,000 schools became art and design schools, okay? And it produced a lot of people. It helped them into the next stage of their industrialization. Now you look at China, they're coming out with their own products and things, right? Which was not the case 20 years back. Okay, India, I think, will do a big coup if we can actually take it to the children's level. Just imagine so many children coming out being creative, and what repercussions and implications that can have into our country. Because our country is desperately, going, trying to go from a developed country, the developing country, to a developed country. And we still have so many people who are poor in this country who should not be poor, right? And I think that can only happen with creative solutions. It cannot happen with something that we've been doing for a long time. It's almost 75 years after independence. Yeah, if you look at it, we should not have been in this stage what we are. I think this probably is one of the things that can probably make a difference into the whole domain, Yeah, I think it is a long answer to it. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really need of the hour to think about the design thinking, and especially in the light of we are going for the curriculum revision and the new textbooks and syllabi is coming in. But my apprehension here is like we have been speaking about this problem solving skills, increasing the creativity of the child, all the critical thinking skills, all these exemplars have been given, many activities have been included in our textbook, and it has been integrated in all the subject area. But where we find the problem is the teachers do not implement it in the classroom, mainly because the examinations are not, or the assessment procedures are not taking any value for these skills or competencies. So we really have to think about how we can administer this, make the teachers do it, so that, because we have a society which is mark oriented. So how to do away with that and come to this?
I don't have a solution to this, because it's a catch-22 kind of situation,
We have
right?
to think horizontally.
Because we have got into a system which is very difficult to change suddenly. I mean, it has become part of our tradition to say, and we got this system from the British and we didn't really change it. We should have done it long time back, right? Yeah, we didn't do it. But I think there are two sides to it. One is that you're changing the curriculum. So the learning process for the children is better, if you look at it. The way I learned and where the present generation learns, there's a big difference. At the end of it, they have to, memorize or whatever, and, sit for an exam is another thing. At least in the process of learning, you're making it better. I think you've solved the first problem if you do that. Second problem, I think the NEP should address it, right? I mean, there are larger questions, for example, one of the dear questions which IIT, for example, asks all the time is that because we have created a system of exam, the JEE, which is an extremely difficult exam. Okay, of course it can see out people and get the best out of them, but it also makes so many children's life miserable, because if you get into IIT, it's one thing, but if you don't get into IIT and all that, you spent your nice period of your life actually studying for something which has not been beneficial. So I think these systems need to probably have a rethinking, and I think it's time to do that. And I think NEP that way,
Yes.
I mean, we all like it because at least it has become, a gateway to change things, At least we have a reason to change things, and I think it's a good time to question. Yeah. There's no ready answers to what you're saying.
For that, we have to understand first that we have to change our thinking pattern. Before designing thinking, pattern of thinking must be changed. He has rightly said that the colonial system and that set of mind, which was not earlier. That's why we could create this much literature, architecture, Sulabh Sutra, Samarangan Dhara Sutra. So many, and you see the design and architecture and the carvings and the miniatures and arts and the literature even.
Right.
What do you think if this much literature has been composed in ancient time, why we are not able to compose such type of literature now? So this requires thinking process has to be changed, and this is some sort of addiction. This time we are addicted to this type of system. So we have to de-addict ourselves first, decolonize mindset first.
And also, I think the middle class
Yes.
mindset also needs to change.
Yes.
Because, see, it was too much against for two disciplines, which was engineering and medicine. You still, at heart, you want your kid to go into one of these. Don't know for whatever reason, but there are so many nicer areas which have come up, and you can do well in many disciplines now. It is not the old system, right? In the old system, maybe those two were the only options available. But now, because there are so many options, but our mindset has not changed.
We are obsessed. Actually, this is an obsession. We are obsessed with that, and then you see the quota industry. This is a agonizing process, and how many kids they are spoiling their life and ending their life itself. So that we have to change first of all. Before being teacher, we have to become human being first of all.
So I think let's do what we can from our end. I think it's more like that, and the system might change on its own. I mean, we have to always think of an optimistic future.
Can I, sir? You have rightly mentioned that about design thinking, a curriculum has also been thought of and it is being tried. Children become a real design thinker. But I consider more important that we should really bring some change in the behavior and attitude of our teachers as well. So because those teachers who are actually handling these children, they are having a fixed and rigid kind of mindset. So, and that is very important because in one of the discussions somewhere I have listened about the emotional intelligence also, whether that can be trained or not. So similarly for design thinking also, we can really some kind of training of our students and you are doing it, and but before that I consider that how to do with the teachers.
Yeah, I think, Dr. Ellen, he can show his examples. I don't know, for me that, their support was very essential in all this. What they did was that they actually had a course called Design Thinking in which about 70,000 CBSE teachers took that course. It was not forced, it was an optional course, but they actually went through, I think, 75 hours of learning, right? 72 hours of learning they went through. And if they could answer a few questions, I mean, there was at the end of it, there was an assessment, and if you pass, about 30,000 have passed through that, and they've been made as the innovation ambassadors, okay? And for example, I don't know my experience, I have very limited experience in dealing with teachers, but these workshops that we conducted, the energy levels and enthusiasm was so high, you won't believe it. All of them said they're very keen on implementing these in their own subjects as well as in design thinking. So that was really heartening to see, Yeah, so that has been our experience. So I think you probably can also change, Yeah, I put that question there, how to change.
Yes, that is, you are right.
It's a tough.
Training for teachers was discussed the first meeting when Aveji and Ellen came. They clearly said that how many teachers? 72,000? 14. Yeah, complete. So this is one thing. Right now, first of all, is the lecture is a way forward for framing our curriculum this time. Syllabi, actually. We are in two ways moving forward. Foundational stage, NCF is almost ready. Our syllabi committee and textbook committee will be working shortly. So for that, we have people here to be in touch with your team or Aveji and LNG, so that will take part. That is one thing. Second thing is for the teachers. So you have already a pattern for that. Means you are doing workshops and this and that. So through that and our technology, Professor Bera is not here, but through our this Diksha, we can integrate this.
Sure.
And we can take it forward. So that way we have to think this time exactly, practically we have to think. It is not that by listening one lecture we can change our thinking process or we can learn all the design thinking. This is a sensitization sort of thing,
Sure.
which is going to happen this time, and motive of this lecture is the same, because few days back we were talking about innovations and all this, and Aviji and I talked, and then we could think that we should meet first. So that way we met, and then we decided that in the meanwhile, fortunately you were here by chance. So we thought to avail this opportunity and at least have one lecture here. And this again our PAC program is there. So this gathering is also from RIs, principals and deans are here, and our faculty is here. So this time this is the best thing we could do. But from here we have to start.
So whatever support from our side, I think we are there to give, definitely. I worked with Professor Jyotsna. We did part of the team which did the graphic design textbook. Yeah.
You pursue the CBSE to start that course again. That's in a great demand actually.
Right?
So you can probably, because we have written to them, if they can revive that course.
I'll just find out. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can do that. Yeah, sure. Ellen, he wanted to speak for it.
Before we end the session, there is a small presentation about its implementation, so I request Dr. Ellen to please have me.
शायद इन्होंने बात कर ली जो आपने नाम भेजा, हमने नोटिफिकेशन तो मिल रहा, हमने 17 तारीख को मीटिंग की, 17 को मीटिंग फिक्स कर दी।
फाइल में भी SIC।
हाँ मैं भी करूँगा थोड़ी देर में, मैं किसी मीटिंग में हूँ 5 बजे के बाद।
Document, and I thank Director Sir working very fast track mode. Yesterday morning 10:30 we met him, just discussing about the and innovation. He called that it should be implemented immediately, and he called the expert, and we are here today. Within 36 hours some implementation is happening and been addressing its thanks sir, on behalf of Ministry of Education, Innovation Cell and IIT Bombay. Sir has been doing this for past 1.5 years. You made it in 1.5 years. Our number of participants and real implementers. So, can I have the slide please?
If you press it, sometimes it comes.
Yeah, you can also change it. First slide. This is slide. Next. First one. Yes, yeah. Thank you. The Ministry of Education Innovation Cell have launched few initiatives for promoting the culture of innovation among school education. 2018 Ministry had launched Innovation Cell. We have been successful in past 4 years in implementing in higher education. We have more than 6,000 institutions, say engineering institution, medical and architect institution, where we have been hand-holding them in implementing this innovation initiative. Whatever learning from that, we found that there is a gap which has been lagging. So that when a student comes to engineering institution or higher education institution, they don't have any foundation about innovation. Keeping that in mind, we have been initiated this innovation at the school initiative. So we had School Innovation Council, we have School Innovation Ambassador training programs, which Professor was talking about, and also we have previous like this. So also we have our design thinking courses which we have been made with that, and we have a National Innovation Entrepreneurship Promotion Policy for promoting innovation, and we want to give guidelines to the schools how to implement this policy, which has been first draft has been already launched actually. It's in the public domain now. So School Innovation Council we have launched 1st July. Our Honorable Secretary Ma'am had been launched this. We have more than 1,050 plus schools which have registered in this School Innovation Council, where they carry out a system of activity. The council includes the principal, vice principal, senior teachers, students, industry experts involved in this process, where we'll be completely hand-holding. It's a 360 degree. So where they start from the field visit, identify the ideation, prototype, product development, then we take him still funding the ideas and taking to the startup. This we have been very successful in higher education institution. So this we want to replicate in a school education system. But Secretary Ma'am is very keen on implementing it and taking it to the next level. This is 360 degree which we are hand-holding it. I think the slide changing. So I'll say next, then you can change it. Otherwise you keep changing it. So it, go back please, back. Yeah. Okay. So this is the 360 degree way which we are working for promoting innovation at schools. And every time after any activity which we conduct, the school used to take 10-15 minutes to upload a report with one photograph and video and how many students and the teachers have been participated. This is our experience in higher education institution. This is the old data. We have students, teachers involved. We have nearly, I can say 2 crore plus activities which was carried out for past 4 years related to ideation, innovation, entrepreneurship, startup, which have been made. This is what Professor was talking about, Innovation Ambassador Program, where with Ministry of Tribal Affairs and Ministry of Education have jointly launched this in July 21st. It's a 72-hour program where we are talking about design thinking and innovation, whereas Professor said we had 30,000 plus teachers who have completed design thinking already. All these programs are volunteer, no one has been forced to carry out. Teachers came forward, carried out, and they have been implementing it in their schools now. We also have idea how to generate an idea, how to handhold it, and prototype product development, IP, finance, sales, and HR. We are talking about venture capital, we are talking about startup, how to get funding. All those being guided in this 72 hours module. In each module, it's a simple procedure where they can log in and register and carry out the training program. So far, as on today date, we have 14,080 teachers completed. As a 72-hour model, each module they go through it, and each module they have assessment. After completing the assessment, they call as an qualified. So those who have been qualified with this, we call them as a Ministry of Education Innovation Cell, Innovation Ambassadors, who have been helping us in change agent at the school level for implementing this. We have 11,624 schools which have been registered with this and carrying out successfully this initiative for past 1 year. So this is across the country, all the states and union territories being covered. They've been comfortable and as I said early, volunteer they've been doing it. Now to implement this in the design thinking, whatever we are talking about, if you want it, we can develop a module, and this module, whatever we have been developed, we can just take and include on this portal, because it's a self-learning where the module-wise content can be onboarded. The teachers can go through it. We can give an assessment to them. After they complete the assessment, it becomes like they are qualified. We can keep a certain percentage of assessment and marks or case studies what they have been solving it. Based on that, a committee can be formed to evaluate them and say that they are qualified enough to teach the subject. That we can do. We are very comfortable in doing that, and we can implement, which I can say at this point of time for implementing this module. So, as I said, the Innovation Ambassador Program, also we have been launched National Innovation Entrepreneurship Promotion Policy, where Honorable Home Minister had launched this on 29th July. Our Secretary School Education also has been part of this program, where we want to handhold the schools or say teachers in completely how to take in entrepreneurship to the next level. That's what we are thinking. We also want to change mindset of teachers. The complete, I can say it's a guiding framework which we have developed. So it had gone to a public notice. They have given. We had few thousands of suggestions to implement it. We have revised it and it's in ministry for publishing it. It's already launched it as a draft one. We are looking for incentivizing the teachers. And so we want to start this entrepreneurship from the school level. That's what which we are trying with that. So this professor had briefed you where we had a different location, this entrepreneurship skill module. Also we have been promoting this out-of-box thinking, creativity, innovation. We have been doing a hackathon. Honorable Prime Minister have been regularly participating in all these hackathons. This year we also introduced for school education, where a large number of students across the country have been participated in the hackathons, where we have winning teams, we are given a prize up to 1 lakh. What we are trying to do all this, we want to make sure that from the grassroots level, the students have been made to think our creative or out-of-box thinking, which we want to bring it in their day-to-day activities is what we are trying to do. We want to bring many more startups. As Professor said, when the creativity starts, we are all talking about 5 trillion economy, which will help. It doesn't happen within a school or within an institute or a premier nationally funded institution alone. It should happen at a grassroots level from schools, so that it helps whatever our mission or vision of our Honorable Prime Minister has been set to us. So that's what we are trying to start this from the school level. With all your support, I'm sure very much we can do. We can say we are a growing country, a developing country. This is an example that in 2015 in the Global Innovation Index, we were at 81st position. Today we are at 40th position. There is, we can see a big jump in these 7 years. That shows us that already we are in the process. So implementing this at the school level will make our country to stand in the better position. That's what we are all working towards, and we are looking forward NCERT support also to take this to next level, because it's not alone an individual or a group or a school. It's going to make our country proud and stand in a better position. That's what we are all looking into it. For implementing this, we have a team at a state-wise. We have been working, coordinating with the schools and teachers for doing it successfully. So with this brief, I thank everyone for being part of this program and giving opportunity to address this occasion. Thank you.
With this, we come to an end of this session of on design thinking and innovation, and I take this opportunity to thank Professor Ravi Povaiya for sparing his time, and perhaps it was in a very short notice, but he readily agreed to come to NCERT and delivered his lecture, and really enlightened us. And I also need to thank Dr. Ellen, who has in a very short presentation explained as to how this can be really scaled up and taken up in school education for the benefit of our children. And I'm thankful to Dr. NCERT that he organized program for all faculty of NCERT for the benefit and his presence here. I thank Joint Director NCERT Professor Sridhar Srivastava for his presence, and I also thank all NCERT colleagues who have keenly participated in this and interacted with the speaker. So with this, I really thank all the speakers and all participants here. Thank you so much.